And like that, our time in Scotland was over and it was time to head home. From our first trip around the Mull of Kintyre and coupling that with our first night passage to the white sands and crystal waters of the Isle of Gigha. Skylar's unexpected swim and onto the breathtaking Loch Spelvey with its family of seals. This trip has pushed us further than ever before, and it would be sad not to go on another trip on the Salty Sea Dog, as she has brought us so many magical moments along the way.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. Today, doing a few little things in this video. First and foremost, talking about the new direction for the channel. So when it first started out, this channel, it was kind of Jo's second channel. For those who may or may not know, she has her main channel, which is her leatherwork channel, and she has a lot of interest in photography, filming, etc., and wanted somewhere where she could kind of experiment with that side of it. So she launched a second channel, doing a lot of photography, walking videos, that sort of thing. Over time though, as you may have noticed, it's sort of transitioned more into sort of focusing on the sailing side of things, and unfortunately for all of you, my mug has started to appear more and more often on this channel. And so with that in mind, we've decided that we're going to change the channel a little bit, and we're going to rename it to Jo and Tim. That way Jo can still do all the work, but I can get half the credit, which I think works out pretty well. And whilst there's probably still going to be some photography / walking type stuff that Jo's going to do, the channel is mainly going to be focused on the sailing side of things. So it's currently February and I'm up in Scotland at Salty, as you can see behind me here. I'm up here just doing a few bits and bobs and some jobs and just checking on the boat. But that brings me to the second part of why we're sort of changing and revamping the channel a little bit. So last year we did 2 trips on Salty. The first trip in, I think, around June time, it was an okay trip. To be honest, I was a bit out of sorts during it. I had a lot of stuff going on. The trip didn't go great in terms of the weather wasn't really on our side, and it just felt like every time we tried to do anything, something got in the way. So we ended up not really achieving much, and it was a bit of a downer, to be honest, on the whole experience of sailing. So when we came back for the second trip though, which hopefully you'll have seen the recent videos on that, that trip was incredible. We sort of really pushed ourselves. We did a lot of different things. We went further than we ever went before, and it taught us 2 things. Number one was that we do really like the sailing and cruising lifestyle, and we do want to carry on doing it and do it as much as we can. And number 2 is that spending 3+ weeks traveling several hundred miles on a 23-foot boat is a bit challenging, if I'm going to be honest. You know, Salty's been a great boat and a perfect boat for us to start out on, but she's you know, she's quite small, she's quite cramped for that length of time, and it started to limit what we could do. Classic example being, you know, we don't bring any of our sort of heavy duty snorkeling stuff with us, like the big wetsuits and things, because we just don't have the space or the weight capacity to carry everything we want to bring. And going to places like Gigha last year, where the water is just beautiful, it was really sad that we didn't have our sort of snorkeling equipment that we could really experience that. So we started to talk and think about getting a new boat last year. And if you watched, I think, the first episode of the latest series, there's a few photos there where we actually went to look at a boat that wasn't too far from where we were keeping Salty. So the plan was that when we got to the end of this season, we would essentially put Salty up for sale, try and sell her, and then start looking potentially for a new boat for this year. As it happened, you know, we started to sort of find boats, and the one we went to see on the trip was sort of an example of the kind of boat we were looking for. But, you know, we hadn't really got anywhere with selling this one yet, so we were umming and ahhing about it, and the boat we were looking at was for sale. So we sort of, you know, we ummed and ahed about it and decided, you know what, to hell with it. It's the boat we want and it's in the right area, so let's go ahead and buy it. And unfortunately, in pretty much the week leading up to us buying it, I had some pretty bad news. Myself and my brother have been running a business for about 12 years, and basically, for a reason I'm not going to go into, the business ended up having to shut down. I won't go into it, but if you are particularly interested, I actually have a channel for that business. It's a bike park essentially, and if you really are interested, I'll stick the link to that in the description, and you can go and see what happened with all of that. But essentially, I found myself about a week out from buying a new boat with no business and no job. So obviously the sensible thing for us to do was to not buy the new boat and, you know, to hang on to Salty. And so to that end, let me introduce you to Hat-Trick. Welcome aboard Hat-Trick. She's a 1986 ETAP 30. When we were looking at boats, we kind of came across the ETAPs and sort of fell in love with the idea of them. I think they're a very well made boat. They've been made sort of on and off by different companies over the years, but they're pretty well fought after. One of the main sort of features that makes them kind of unique is they have this double hull design, or double skinned hull design, where basically you have an outer skin of fiberglass, inner skin of fiberglass, and in between you have encapsulated foam. What this actually does is it means that the hull itself is more buoyant, or has more buoyancy than the boat itself does, or the weight of the boat. So what that means is even if the boat was filled to this level with water, she would actually still float, because the hull itself has enough buoyancy to keep it afloat. Given that we've always been a fairly sort of cautious, risk-averse kind of sailors, that kind of level of safety felt like quite a good idea for us. You know, cost-wise, she was pretty reasonable. She's priced based on her condition, shall we say. She needs quite a bit of work. She was within the budget we could afford, and she's in a pretty solid state in terms of sort of the structural side of it. You know, the hull is in good condition, the rigging's in pretty good condition, you know, tired, but, you know, no major issues there. And most of the work needed is sort of cosmetic, tidying up, and sort of modernising, which is all stuff that we sort of feel relatively comfortable doing ourselves. So yeah, so we kind of felt that this was a project that, whilst quite a big project, was something that we could take on board. So the plan was, before we closed the business, was that we would use our sort of holiday this year to do maintenance and sort of modernise the boat and do a lot of work on it, and we wouldn't really do much, if any, sailing this year, with the view that the following year we would sort of go off on an adventure. With the business gone and me having more time now, we're planning on doing a lot of maintenance sort of from now until the summer, and try and get as far as we can along the process, with the view that later on this year we are actually going to try and get out on a pretty significant trip. And whilst it's all a bit up in the air, my actual sort of stretch goal for this year is to reach the Isle of Skye. I think that'll be an incredible trip. I think the coastline all the way up there is just magical, and I'd really like to make that trip and step foot on Skye. And I think this boat would be a perfect one to do it with. Obviously, taking on board this boat and all the work that's required, you know, with our sort of personal situation at the moment, might not seem like the most sensible idea. You know, to be clear, you know, we're not destitute. It's a real tough situation, you know, but I've been saving up for quite a long time to buy a new boat. You know, I didn't put this boat on the credit card or anything like that. And although I'm not working sort of full time at the business, it is still providing a sort of enough of an income for me to basically pay my mortgage and bills. So, you know, at least I'm not kind of going backwards financially, even though I'm not sort of going forward. So whilst it's a bit of a, you know, heart decision more than a head decision, you know, it's not a crazy thing where we're sort of running ourselves into debt or anything to do with this. Now, normally at this point in the video would be where we'd announce our Patreon and Venmo and Cash App or whatever. We don't have any of that stuff at the moment. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, or that we maybe at some point wouldn't do something like that. You know, there are incredible, amazing people out there who are incredibly generous, and for whatever reason, you know, love to sort of help out with this kind of thing. And I'm not sort of too proud to accept help from people, but we're just not kind of there yet. So if you do want to support us at the moment, you know, the best way is subscribing, liking, leaving a comment. Even if it's just, you're an idiot, don't really care. The algorithm doesn't care what you say as long as you say something. Obviously this channel doesn't generate any income, and it's a long way short of being big enough to generate any income. But you know, baby steps, you know, it'll every little helps. And you know, if someday we could grow this to a point where it provides at least, you know, a little bit of money towards the sailing, then it means we can do more sailing, we can make more videos, and you know, you can get more content. But ultimately, like I say, at the moment these videos are about us you know, documenting it for our own selves, so that when I'm old and crotchety, or more old and crotchety, I can look back at these videos and reminisce. And also because I think it's just a nice thing. I think it'd be a nice thing for you to get to sort of come along with our little journey here from you know, this crazy sort of rundown boat to hopefully some adventures on the high seas. So that'll about do for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Next episode, we're going to be going back in time from when we picked up Hat-Trick and brought it over, so check out that one when it comes out. But in the meantime, make sure you subscribe and like, and we'll see you in the next one.